In the shadow of the once bustling city of Havenbrook, silence had grown louder with each passing day. No sirens. No traffic. No voices. Only the occasional flutter of wings overhead or the eerie groan of distant wind pushing through shattered windows. The city hadn't fallen in a single night, it crumbled slowly, like a dam cracking under pressure, with no one noticing until the flood arrived. Jackson Hale stood atop the roof of the old Transit Authority building, his rifle slung across his chest and a pair of binoculars pressed to his eyes. He scanned the streets below, noting the absence of movement. That was strange. Usually by now, just past dusk, the feeders would begin to emerge from their shadows, drawn by hunger and instinct. But tonight, nothing stirred. Behind him, the door creaked open. A short, wiry figure stepped out into the cool air, Maya Reyes, a former EMT and Jackson's reluctant partner in this new world. "Still nothing?" she asked, brushing a few strands of hair from her dirt-smeared forehead. "Nothing," Jackson replied, lowering the binoculars. "It's too quiet." "Maybe they moved east," Maya offered, though her voice lacked confidence. "Or maybe they're planning something," he muttered. She looked at him sharply. "They're not people. They don't plan." Jackson didn't answer. He wasn't sure he believed that anymore. He'd seen things, coordinated ambushes, groups of feeders waiting in silence until survivors stepped into kill zones. He'd once watched a horde circle a supply truck for hours until the defenders inside broke from thirst and panic. Whatever these things were now, they weren't mindless anymore. Down below, the remnants of humanity gathered behind barricades and boarded up shops. These weren't soldiers, just people who refused to run. Or had nowhere to go. Jackson and Maya were part of the coalition, a loose alliance of survivors defending the west side of Havenbrook. Their command post sat at what used to be a coffee roastery, now surrounded by sandbags and machine gun nests made from office chairs and rusted pipes. But numbers were dwindling. Food was growing scarce. Ammunition even scarcer. The only thing in abundance was fear. "Let's get back down," Jackson said at last, gripping the rifle as he headed toward the stairs. Inside, they passed a hallway lined with photos, remnants from a time when this building had been a tourist hub. Now, the smiling faces stared blankly into the gloom, watching as survivors crept through their silent tomb. They reached the main floor just as the generator kicked in with a chug and low hum. Amber lights flickered on, casting dim shadows across a room filled with crates and maps. At the center stood Ellis Grant, a former history teacher turned militia leader, hunched over a map of the city with a grease pencil in hand. "They're pulling back," Jackson reported. Ellis looked up. "So we're right, they're regrouping." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You really think they're capable of that?" "We've seen the signs," Ellis said grimly. "Controlled movements. Coordinated attacks. That supply convoy we lost last week, 3 different alleys blocked at once. That's not random." Jackson nodded in agreement. Across the room, a radio crackled to life. Static hissed, followed by a faint voice, "Unit 7 reporting, movement in Sector 4, they're not attacking. They're just standing, watching." The voice dissolved into noise. Everyone froze. Ellis turned to Jackson. "Take Maya. Find Unit 7. I want eyes on whatever this is." Maya grabbed her pack without hesitation. "How far out?" 15 blocks. Use the back alleys. Avoid the park, it's been overrun for days." As they stepped into the fading light of evening, the tension wrapped around them like a noose. Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, felt like a trap waiting to spring. Sector 4 had once been a shopping district, cobblestone streets lined with boutiques and bakeries, now broken glass and overturned carts. When they reached the rendezvous point, they found no signs of Unit 7, just silence and the faint metallic scent of rusted blood. Then they saw them. A dozen feeders, standing perfectly still in the center of the street. Not moving. Not moaning. Just watching. Maya's grip on her pistol tightened. What are they doing?" "I don't know," Jackson whispered. But this isn't like before. Suddenly, one of the feeders tilted its head, slowly, deliberately, toward them. Then another. And another. Maya pulled back, breath trembling. Jackson, this isn't a patrol. This is a message. Jackson stepped backward, eyes wide with realization. The war's about to change. They ran. And behind them, the silent watchers did not follow. They just waited. Would you like me to continue with part 2 now? Jackson and Maya ran through the winding alleys of Havenbrook, their boots striking the pavement with desperate urgency. The image of the unmoving feeders, those glassy eyes tracking them without a sound, clung to their thoughts like a stain that wouldn't fade. Maya halted behind a collapsed dumpster, chest heaving. They should have chased us, she whispered. That's what they always do. But they just stood there. Jackson didn't respond at first. He crouched beside her, his eyes scanning the way they'd come. No sounds of pursuit. No groans. Just the steady drip of water from a busted pipe and the crackle of a fire burning far off. They were sending a message, he finally muttered. But we don't know what it means. Maya looked at him. Or who it was meant for. They made their way back to the Coalition's outpost, avoiding open streets and broken glass that might reveal their movements. Inside, they found Ellis still bent over the city map, a deep crease running between his brows. Several other survivors gathered around him, Liam, the engineer, Reese, the ex-cop, and Ren, barely 16, but their best scout. What did you see? Ellis asked as soon as they entered. Jackson set down his rifle. They were waiting. Standing in a line. Not attacking. Just watching. Maya added, they saw us. All of them. But not a single one moved. It was like they were analyzing us. A heavy silence followed. Ren shifted uncomfortably. I saw something weird earlier too. Down by the west perimeter. They were stacking things. Bricks. Debris. Not blocking us out, just building something. They're organizing, Ellis said, his voice low. We've been too focused on the usual rules. Noise attracts them, light draws them in. But those rules don't apply anymore. This is a different game. Reese shook her head. But why now? They've been brainless monsters for over a year. Why change? No one had an answer. But Liam stepped forward with something in his hand, a small handheld tablet. I intercepted a transmission an hour ago. Someone was broadcasting out of Havenbrook General. Weak signal, but I picked up one line clearly. He tapped a button, and the words came through faint and crackled. Project waking phase 2. The room went still. What does that mean? Maya asked. Whatever it is, Ellis said, it started with that hospital. That's where the outbreak reached critical mass 6 months ago. Jackson narrowed his eyes. You think someone's still in there? Running something? Liam nodded slowly. Or maybe something else is. Either way, that place holds answers. Ellis looked at the map again. It's 12 blocks into the dead zone. No man's land. Hordes everywhere. I'll go, Jackson said without hesitation. Take a team, sneak in at night. Maya frowned. You always volunteer. He looked at her. Because I'm willing to do what others won't. I'm coming with you, she said before Ellis could speak. Ellis nodded. You'll leave at dusk tomorrow. Scout first. If the feeders are changing, we need to understand how, and fast. This could be the edge we need. That night, the base fell into a tense quiet. Candles replaced the overhead lights. People whispered in corners. Parents clutched children close. And outside, the wind carried no sounds of the dead, only silence deeper than before. As the hours passed, Jackson sat alone on the roof, rifle across his lap. The city stretched before him, dark and broken. But tonight, it didn't feel empty. It felt watched. Downstairs, Maya cleaned her pistol and examined a hand-drawn map. Ren entered the room quietly and approached her. "You think they're still human?" Ren asked suddenly. Maya looked up. "The feeders?" Ren nodded. "I don't know," Maya admitted. "But I think something inside them remembers what it was like to be." Ren sat beside her. "If they do remember, maybe that's worse." They sat in silence, both feeling the weight of the question hang in the air. The next morning, as the sun rose behind a veil of gray clouds, the team prepared to move. Jackson, Maya, Ren, and Reese, all dressed in scavenged gear, armed with whatever weapons they could find. Liam handed Jackson a small comm unit. "Short range only. Don't count on help if things go wrong." "They usually do," Jackson muttered, then looked to his team. "Let's move." They slipped into the city like shadows, the streets quiet and undisturbed. The path to the hospital would take them through 4 blocks of known feeder territory, and past the ruins of Havenbrook Park, which no one had entered in weeks. As they approached the edge of the park, Jackson raised a fist and halted. He scanned the area with binoculars, and froze. Dozens of feeders stood among the trees. But none moved. They formed a wide circle in the middle of the grass, facing inward. At the center of that circle was something tall, covered in black tarp and tangled wires. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. Maya stepped beside him. "What is that?" Jackson lowered the binoculars, heart pounding. "I think," he whispered, "that's what's waking them up." The park was a graveyard of sound. No birds. No wind. No moaning. Just the low, throbbing hum coming from the center of the feeder circle. The strange machine, wrapped in black tarp and thick with wires, pulsed faintly like a dying heartbeat. Jackson crouched behind the rusted skeleton of a swing set, peering through the binoculars again. The feeders remained motionless, facing inward toward the thing in the center like worshippers in a silent ritual. "This is bad," Reese murmured, crouched beside him, eyes darting from the feeders to the strange device. "We've never seen them do this. Never this organized." Ren, barely visible under her oversized hoodie, whispered, "It's like they're guarding it." "Or listening to it," Maya added, adjusting her scope. "Like they're being controlled." Jackson scanned the machine again. It didn't look like any known tech. It was a military issue. The tarp had several holes torn through it, revealing dark panels, blinking lights, and what looked like a satellite dish welded at an odd angle. "We can't go around the park," Jackson said, his voice low but firm. "The hospital's on the far side. This is the only way." Reese leaned closer. "We're 4 people. That's at least 30 feeders. Maybe more we can't see. We're not getting through that line without waking hell." "Then we don't go through," Jackson replied. "We go under." Ren blinked. "What?" Jackson pointed to the cracked pavement along the edge of the park. "Old stone tunnels. I remember them from before. They run under the park. We crawl in, stay low, and come up behind the hospital." Maya looked at him. "You're sure they'll still be clear?" "No," he admitted. "But I'd rather take my chances underground than in the middle of that nightmare ritual." Minutes later, the team found the rusted manhole cover buried beneath overgrown vines and debris. With effort, and the creaking protest of age, it gave way. The stench hit them instantly, mold, rot, and wet rust. They descended, one by one, into the darkness. The only light came from Ren's shoulder lamp, casting eerie shadows across the slimy walls. "This is disgusting," Reese muttered, stepping over a puddle filled with something that probably used to be a rat. Jackson led the way, map in hand, counting turns as they moved through the tight, echoing corridors. "If we don't take a wrong step, we'll surface just behind the emergency bay." They walked in silence, boots splashing lightly through shallow runoff. But then, Ren froze. "Wait." They all stopped. "What is it?" Maya whispered. Ren turned her lamp down a side tunnel, and they saw it. Claw marks. Deep, gouging ones, dragging down the concrete as if something had been crawling on the walls. Feeders don't come down here, Reese said. Do they? Jackson shook his head slowly. Not unless they're changing. They move faster after that. The air grew thicker. Their nerves, tighter. But the tunnel finally ended at a rusty ladder leading up to a crumbling access hatch. Jackson climbed first. He pushed up gently, and froze. He could hear humming. Not from inside the tunnel. From the surface. The same low, rhythmic hum as the machine in the park. He opened the hatch just a sliver and peeked through. They had surfaced behind the hospital loading bay, just like he'd planned. But the lot was filled with more of the silent feeders. Not packed together like the ones at the park. Spread out, as if guarding something inside the building. And just beyond them. Another machine. Taller. Uncovered. Fully lit. This one wasn't pulsing. It was glowing. Jackson dropped back down. We're here. But there's another device. Bigger than the first. And the feeders, same behavior. What the hell are they building? Maya asked. Reese swore under her breath. Why protect machines? What's the point? Jackson looked at them grimly. Only one way to find out. They waited until nightfall. The feeders didn't move. Didn't react. Just stood in formation. At 1:17 a.m., the machine flared with light. Not bright, but focused. Like a beam targeting the sky. Wren stared up at it. That's a signal. To what? Reese asked. Jackson's answer came slowly, chilled and uncertain. Not what? Who? And that was when the radio on Reese's vest crackled with static. A voice, garbled but human, cut through the noise. They're not just infected, they were designed. We tried to stop it, it's learning. Then silence. The team exchanged glances. They weren't fighting mindless zombies anymore. They were at war with something learning to think. The loading bay behind Havenbrook General was deathly still. The glow of the second machine threw eerie shadows across the cracked concrete, painting silhouettes of the feeders in long, haunting lines. They didn't move. They didn't breathe. But they were alert, every head tilted slightly upward, like statues listening for something that hadn't arrived yet. Jackson crouched just below the open maintenance hatch, gripping the edges of the rusted metal rim as he watched the scene unfold above. Reese, beside him, kept her hand on her holstered sidearm. That signal we picked up, someone's in there, Jackson said quietly. Or was. Maya adjusted her gear and looked up the ladder. This is it. We either get answers now, or wait until whatever they're planning finishes. Wren swallowed hard. What if it already has? The team moved like ghosts. One by one, they climbed into the loading area, using the shadows cast by broken dumpsters and collapsed scaffolding to mask their movement. The feeders didn't react, just as before. They stood in position around the glowing machine, unmoving, unbreathing. Jackson signaled for the others to follow him along the far wall. From there, they could access the stairwell that led into the hospital's sublevels, specifically, the quarantine labs where the original outbreak had once been studied. They slipped inside the hospital through a rusted service door. The hallway was cloaked in darkness, the emergency lights flickering red every few seconds like a slow, dying heartbeat. I thought this place was abandoned, Maya muttered. It was, Reese answered. But someone came back. You don't build those machines by accident. Down the hallway, the walls bore signs of panic, bullet holes, dried scuff marks, scratched warning signs half torn from the walls. A bloodless, faded trail led toward the elevator shaft, but they took the stairs instead, silent, careful, every step like thunder in the quiet. They reached the third sublevel, the air growing colder and damper. The quarantine wing's doors were ajar, security locks smashed. Inside, the laboratory lights were flickering, barely operational, but something else drew their attention immediately. The computers were still running. Powers being rerouted, Liam whispered, examining one of the consoles. That machine outside? It's feeding electricity into here. Someone set this up. Jackson approached the main terminal. A login screen blinked, then suddenly flickered, and disappeared. A video began to play on its own. A man in a lab coat appeared on screen, looking disheveled and terrified. Behind him, alarms were blaring and lights were flickering, recorded chaos frozen in time. "This is Dr. Emery Lang," the man said. "If anyone finds this, know that it wasn't an accident. The virus was part of a weapons program, Project Waking. It was never supposed to reach the public. But when it did, the failsafe didn't work. Instead of killing the virus, it adapted. It began learning from neural patterns, mimicking behavior. And now, it's evolving." He looked off-screen for a moment. "We tried to shut it down. Destroy the signal devices. But the infected started protecting them. Like they knew." The video glitched, skipped a few seconds, then resumed. "If you're seeing this, they're probably already organizing. We believe the devices send out a frequency, one that overrides instinct and installs something else. Directive. Coordination." The screen cut to static. Silence. Until Ren whispered, "They're being programmed?" Liam scanned another terminal. That second machine, it's labeled Node 2. There's a Node 3 listed, too. Location, unknown. Jackson clenched his jaw. So there's more. Maya moved to the window slit and looked out. They're not attacking because they don't need to. They're waiting for orders. For the final signal. Suddenly, the hospital trembled, just slightly, but enough to knock dust from the ceiling tiles. "Earthquake?" Ren asked, eyes wide. "No," Reese said, heading to the stairwell. "That came from above." They scrambled back up to the loading bay, only to find the machine pulsing more intensely now, its glow strobing in short bursts. The feeders were beginning to move, slow, synchronized steps, turning away from the hospital. Marching. Not toward the survivors, but away from them. Jackson stood stunned. Where are they going? And then they saw it, in the sky, a third beam, pale blue and far off, stabbing upward from somewhere across the city. "Node 3, Maya whispered. "They're all linking up," Jackson said, mind racing. "And when they're connected, they won't just follow orders. They'll become something new," Liam added grimly. The silent war wasn't silent anymore. It was coordinating. Shifting. And unless they could stop the signal, the world as they knew it would disappear, replaced by an enemy that no longer stumbled in the dark, but marched in formation. The team raced through the ruined streets of Eastgate, keeping low, staying in the shadows. The blue column of light from Node 3 shimmered in the distance, casting a soft glow over the city's shattered skyline. And everywhere they looked, the feeders were moving, not aimlessly, but in lines. Purposeful. Quiet. As if something was guiding them. "They're migrating," Reese muttered, ducking behind an overturned car. "Like birds following a seasonal call." "Not birds," Jackson said grimly, eyes locked on the horizon. "Soldiers." Ren tapped her radio, trying to boost the signal. "That transmission we caught earlier, it might have come from someone watching all this. A survivor. A scientist. Whoever it was, they knew things we didn't. We need to find them," Maya said. "Before the feeders reach full coordination. Once they link the third node, we may not have a second chance." A burst of static suddenly filled Ren's earpiece. Then, another voice, faint but clearer this time. "Lighthouse Protocol, come east. Franklin District. I'm still here." The signal cut out again. Ren looked up. Franklin District. That's halfway across the city. Jackson nodded. "We move now." Double time. They cut through narrow alleys and collapsed apartment buildings, avoiding the wide roads where clusters of feeders moved in perfect silence. Once, they passed a playground where 3 of them stood completely still, facing the sunset with eyes clouded in eerie calm. They didn't attack. They didn't even acknowledge the humans moving nearby. It was unsettling. like being ignored by something that had already decided your fate. Hours later, exhausted and bruised, the team reached Franklin District, a once busy part of town now reduced to ashes and skeletal buildings. Smoke drifted from the wreckage, and in the distance, they could see more machines being assembled by hand, by the feeders themselves. Are they building more nodes? Ren asked, breathless. Looks like it, Maya said. That's not infection. That's intelligence. Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air. The team froze. From a nearby rooftop, a signal mirror flashed once, twice. Then a third time. Morse code. LIGHT. Lighthouse, Jackson whispered. Someone's still alive. They scaled the side of the building cautiously, using a bent fire escape and collapsed scaffolding. At the top, they found him. An older man in a tattered jacket, wearing broken glasses, his beard dusted with ash. He held a makeshift antenna and a small solar-powered transmitter. You made it, he said with relief. Didn't think anyone still listened. Who are you? Jackson asked, panting. How do you know about the nodes? The man introduced himself as Henry Vale, a former systems analyst for the original Waking project. I was one of the few who realized what was happening before it all collapsed, he said. I stayed off-grid. Kept watching. I've been tracking the node frequencies for weeks. Are they trying to call for help? Ren asked. From outside Earth? Henry shook his head. No. They're not calling for help. They're calling for unity. The virus learned that chaos is inefficient. It evolved a command protocol. It used the old satellite systems. Now it's installing a central command hub. And when all nodes are connected? Maya asked. Then they'll stop being separate minds, Henry said. They'll become one. Hive logic. Instant communication. Strategic action. Jackson leaned forward. How long do we have? Henry looked toward the third beam still glowing faintly in the sky. A few hours. Maybe less. Once Node 3 stabilizes, they'll all sink. We have to destroy it, Reese said flatly. Easier said than done, Henry replied. It's heavily protected, and if you hit it the wrong way, it could send the final broadcast early. Ren turned to Jackson. What do we do? Jackson looked over the city, lips pressed in thought. Then we go dark. Underground. Hit Node 3 from below. Henry's eyes widened. That could work. There's an old subway line that runs near the broadcast site. The station is likely buried, but if you can reach it. We'll reach it, Jackson said firmly. Henry stood, gathering his gear. Then you're going to need maps. Codes. And something to jam the signal, just long enough to disable the core. As the group huddled around the table where Henry unrolled his makeshift schematics, the low thrum of the third node filled the air, a steady pulse that echoed like a heartbeat through concrete and steel. The city had become a battlefield. But in that moment, on the roof of a forgotten building in the heart of dead America, humanity found its resolve. The final war hadn't begun yet. But dawn was coming. Beneath the city's shattered bones, the old subway tunnels lay still, buried in layers of dust and silence. No trains had passed through in over a year. The only things that moved down there now were rats, echoes, and worse. Jackson led the way with Henry's hand-drawn map clutched in his glove. The tunnel ahead was almost pitch black, except for the occasional flicker of a dying emergency lamp. Behind him, Maya and Liam checked their weapons, more for reassurance than for readiness. Ren walked in the center of the group, keeping an eye on their rear, while Reese covered their flanks. The plan was simple: reach the collapsed Franklin Line station, breach the lower access tunnels, and approach Node 3 from beneath. It was their best, and only, chance to disable it before the final synchronization occurred. According to Henry, once all three nodes connected, the feeders would no longer operate independently. They'd become a single, adaptive intelligence with full citywide control. And from there, nothing could stop them. Signals growing stronger, Liam said, checking his modified frequency scanner. "We're getting close." "We don't want to get too close too fast," Jackson replied. "We're not even sure what's guarding it." Maya squinted ahead through her flashlight's narrow beam. "Probably not just the usual mindless ones." "No," Ren added. "Henry said some of them still remember who they were. That makes them dangerous." They continued forward, boots crunching on broken glass and dirt. Strange graffiti covered the tunnel walls, symbols they didn't recognize. Circles, arrows, and something that looked eerily like a virus cell. Someone, or something, had been down here recently. Then they saw it. A metal gate that had once sealed off the old terminal was now pried open and bent outward like something had forced its way through. Beyond it, the tunnel widened into what was once a loading platform, now converted into something far darker. "Hold up," Reese said, raising a hand. The group stopped just short of the entry. Along the walls, strange humming devices pulsed with the same blue light as the surface nodes. Feeders stood nearby, 6 of them, motionless but alert, backs straight, heads turned slightly in their direction. "They're guarding it," Ren whispered. "Just like soldiers on patrol." Jackson studied them carefully. "And they're synced to Node 3. Which means if we make one wrong move, they'll all know," Maya finished. Liam knelt beside a nearby service tunnel, brushing away debris to reveal a rusted maintenance hatch. "This drops us beneath the terminal. We can move through the electrical shafts and come up directly beneath the signal core." Jackson nodded. "Let's go quiet." One by one, they slipped through the hatch, crawling through tight metal shafts. The air was thick with humidity and rot, and every scrape of metal echoed like a drumbeat. Eventually, they reached the final crawl space, a narrow grate overlooking the heart of Node 3's underground structure. And what they saw froze them in place. The node was massive, twice the size of the other machines. Cables pulsed with light, running along the walls like veins. But it wasn't the machinery that unnerved them. It was the humans. Dozens of them. Former citizens of the city. Standing in orderly rows. Eyes open. Blank. Breathing, but no longer conscious. They were connected. Thin cords ran from the node into the backs of their necks, feeding directly into their nervous systems. A low-frequency hum vibrated through the floor as they stood in perfect silence. "My God," Maya breathed. "They're using people to power the node." "Not just power," Liam whispered. "They're being networked, like processors in a computer." Ren fought back a shiver. "If we shut it down, will it kill them?" Jackson didn't answer. He looked down at the signal disruptor Henry had given them, a small box, jury-rigged with scavenged tech. It would only give them 30 seconds of jamming before it overheated. "We're doing this," he said. "Set the charge on the central conduit. When the signal drops, everything resets for a few seconds. That's our window." They waited for the moment to strike. Then Reese crawled forward, placed the device against the wall, and gave a single nod. Jackson pressed the button. The jamming pulse activated. Instantly, the hum stopped. The connected people collapsed to the floor like puppets with cut strings. The feeders above began to wail, confused, disconnected, unstable. "Go!" Jackson shouted. They burst into the room, racing for the node's core. Maya threw the charge onto the exposed wiring. Liam yanked a data drive from the control panel, hoping to preserve whatever intel they could. The disruptor's timer ticked down. 03. 02. 01. The explosion rocked the tunnel. Flames licked the ceiling. The machine screamed, an inhuman, mechanical howl, before going dark. Silence returned. But it didn't last long. Because something deeper had just awakened. Smoke clung to the ceiling like a suffocating fog. Sparks rained down from the shattered core of Node 3, the massive construct now a heap of scorched wires and twisted metal. The team crouched amid the wreckage, coughing, ears ringing from the blast. But it wasn't over. The moment the node went dark, something else had started, moving. The floor trembled. Faint vibrations ran up the steel supports. Jackson rose slowly, scanning the dark corners of the underground chamber. Everyone, stay alert. Ren clutched the data drive they had salvaged from the node. That shouldn't have happened. It felt too controlled. It was, Liam said, watching a strand of cable slither back into the wall like a retreating vine. It's not dead. Just shifting. A deep mechanical groan echoed from the tunnel behind them. They all turned as the ground cracked open at the far end of the chamber. Something enormous was pushing up from the earth, something built not of flesh, but of metal and organic material, fused in a horrifying synthesis. It was tall. Too tall. Standing at least 3 meters high, the creature was humanoid in shape but lacked a face. Instead, a cluster of glowing sensory nodes blinked across its head, scanning the space in rhythmic pulses. Its arms ended in jagged tendrils, twitching with latent energy. It's a sentinel, Ren whispered. I've seen files, early prototypes the military was testing. They were meant to control riot zones. But this isn't military anymore, Maya muttered. It's evolved. The sentinel stepped forward, slow, calculated, and silent. The collapsed node behind them sparked again, like a failing heart trying to restart. Blue energy flickered down the corridor from the direction they'd entered. They're rerouting power, Liam said. Trying to bring it back online. Jackson made a decision. We can't stay here. We move deeper. Find another access tunnel. Where? Reese asked. We're boxed in. But then Henry's voice crackled through Ren's earpiece. Get out now. You've disrupted the sync, they're converging on your location. There's an emergency shaft to the north of your position. If you can reach it, I can seal the tunnel behind you. Copy that. Ren called back. We're moving. The team sprinted as the sentinel lunged. It moved faster than anything its size should. Steel claws slammed down inches from Reese's back as he dove through a broken maintenance door. Maya fired her last 2 rounds into the creature's chest. The bullets sparked and bounced off harmlessly. It didn't even flinch. Go! Jackson shouted. I'll cover. No! Maya yelled. We stay together. But Jackson had already raised a flare, igniting it and waving it wildly to draw the sentinel's focus. It worked. The creature turned and began to chase him into the opposite tunnel. Jack! Ren screamed, grabbing Maya. We have to go. Now! Tears in her eyes, Maya turned and ran after the others. The team reached the emergency shaft moments later. Henry's voice guided them in. Once you're in, I'm closing the gate. I don't know how long it'll hold. They climbed the narrow ladder one by one, hearts pounding. Below, the roar of the sentinel grew louder as it realized its prey was escaping. Ren was the last to climb. As her boots cleared the hatch, the gate slammed shut beneath her, and not a second too soon. The sound of metal claws tearing at reinforced steel echoed up the shaft. Sealed, Henry confirmed. But it won't last long. They're angry now. You've disrupted their perfect logic. You've made them remember chaos. The team sat in stunned silence inside the small security chamber at the top of the shaft. Above them, moonlight filtered in through a cracked grate. They were back on the surface. But it no longer felt like salvation. Liam glanced at the data drive Ren held. What's on it? I don't know, she said. But it's encrypted. And it came from the node's core control panel. It might be everything, how they think, how they plan, or how to stop them. Reese stood guard at the doorway, eyes scanning the skyline. Look. The blue light from the third node was gone, but in its place, faint flickers had begun appearing across the city. Short bursts. Like testing signals. Maya frowned. It's not over. No, Jackson said, stepping out from the shadows. He was bloodied, limping, but alive. He had escaped the sentinel, somehow. I slowed it down, he said, breathing hard. But I didn't kill it. And there's more. A lot more. Ren looked at the horizon. The lights were spreading. The silent war wasn't ending. It was only changing shape. And dawn was no longer a promise. It was a deadline. The sky was beginning to change. Dawn, once a symbol of hope, now crept across the horizon like a slow-burning fuse. A pale gray light touched the tops of ruined buildings, casting long shadows over a city that no longer slept. Jackson and his team stood on the rooftop of a half-collapsed radio tower near the city's edge, overlooking the remnants of what was once humanity's stronghold. Maya adjusted the broken scope on her rifle. It's spreading faster than we thought. Blue pulses, like breathing embers, blinked across the skyline. Dozens of locations now glowed with synchronized signals. They weren't nodes anymore. They were nests. Places where feeders gathered, linked together, and evolved. They're not just reacting, Ren said. They're reorganizing. Changing strategies. Henry's voice came through the team's comms again, weaker now. The network's unstable since you took out Node 3. But it's adapting. I estimate, you've got less than an hour before it achieves full sync. Liam held up the data drive. There's something on here. I found a line of code in the boot sequence. It's not alien. It's ours. Government protocols, buried deep. You're saying we made them? Maya asked. No. But we gave them structure. A framework to grow from. The virus was biological, but the tech that controls them, it was human-made. Jackson clenched his jaw. We tried to control chaos. And chaos learned how to fight back. Below them, movement stirred on the street. A formation of feeders, dozens strong, moved silently toward the tower. But they weren't shambling anymore. They walked with purpose. Coordinated. Like a hive. Or an army. They're coming here, Reese said. They know we have the drive. They know we're the last threat, Ren added. Jackson turned to the others. There's a transmitter on this tower. If we can boost Henry's code using the original command signal inside this drive, we can send a pulse. Something that might override the central connection. Shut them down, at least temporarily. And if it fails? Maya asked. Then we buy time, he said. For whoever's left. Maybe enough to warn others. Maybe enough for a new plan. They didn't hesitate. There was no more time for doubt. Jackson and Liam sprinted to the rusted control cabin near the antenna. Ren and Reese hauled the backup generator to life, while Maya took a sniper position near the tower's ledge, scanning for approaching threats. Henry guided them through the process, his voice glitching, breaking, as the feeder's interference deepened. Begin signal injection, now. Liam inserted the drive. Blue sparks danced across the console. The antenna whined. Below, the feeders stopped mid-step. Heads tilted. Eyes glowing. Listening. It's working, Ren whispered. Then the tower shook violently. A screech, inhuman and mechanical, rose from the streets. The sentinel had returned. Twice as fast now. Repaired. Enraged. Reese fired down at it, but the bullets were useless. Maya targeted its knees, slowing it slightly, but not stopping it. The creature hurled a metal beam straight into the tower, ripping through the lower supports. Keep broadcasting. Jackson shouted, gripping the console. We're almost there. The pulse intensified. Across the city, feeders twitched and spasmed. Some fell. Others screamed and staggered like their senses were being torn apart. We're overriding their signal, Liam said. The code, it's rewriting their neural sync. But the tower won't hold. Maya cried out as another support groaned and snapped beneath them. Ren grabbed a flare and ran to the far ledge. She lit it and waved it high. Hey! Come on, you ugly scrap pile. Over here. The sentinel locked onto her and began climbing. Ren looked once at the group and smiled. Then she leapt. The creature followed her off the ledge. They fell together, down into the wreckage below. "Ren!" Maya screamed. Jackson swallowed the grief. "Signal's still strong. Finish the override." The system began its final phase. Data streamed through the antenna like a current through lightning rods. All over the city, feeders dropped. Motionless. Silent. The sentinel didn't rise again. The last light in its chest blinked, and died. Then, quiet. No movement. No noise. Just wind. Jackson, Maya, Liam, and Reese sat in the tower's cabin, staring at the city below. The sun was finally rising, not gray, but golden, cutting through the storm clouds. "Did we win?" Liam asked softly. "No," Jackson replied. "We survived." Henry's voice returned faintly. "You gave us a chance. That's more than anyone's had in a long time." Maya wiped her eyes. "Ren gave us more than that." They looked out at the silent city, a place still broken but no longer enslaved. The war wasn't over. But the silence had changed. And somewhere in that stillness, hope had a chance to grow again. Would you like me to create a thumbnail or YouTube description to go with this full 8-part story?